Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 5 of summer camp. If you can believe it, it is week 5. We have been through 4 full weeks together, and in about an hour, we'll be through 5. We're going to talk about tackling math and STEM content with EquatIO today. So we're shifting from read and write, but we're going to focus on EquatIO and actually how this program is central to supporting students across campus, especially as we're looking at so many colleges going to either a hybrid, high flex, an online model, and then also just around accessibility as well. So let's get going. If you haven't joined us before, my name is Rachel Cruzel. I'm a Territory Sales Director here at TextHelp. I've spent the last 10 years working at 2 different higher education institutions in Minnesota, doing assistive technology, alt format, testing, accommodation, so I know the field super well, and I'm excited to get to spend this hour with you today. As always, just a couple housekeeping items. I know that this is a review, but you're all on mute. If you do have a question, we can definitely unmute you. Otherwise, feel free to throw your questions or thoughts into the chat box or the question area. I'll do my best to answer questions as I do every week. With this program being very high math based, I'll do my absolute best, but I'll connect you with resources or answer questions after the fact if I can't quite get you what you need. As always, we'll send out a recording of the webinar. I've been tending to be able to do so by end of business, same day, so watch for that in your email. I'll also send out a copy of the slide deck and resources as well if you didn't end up getting them yesterday afternoon when I sent them out. Very minor tweaks on the slide deck since yesterday afternoon when I sent it out. You probably won't even notice any differences other than one slide I added at the beginning. So what is today going to look like? We're going to talk about what EquatIO is. We're going to talk about how it works to support a campus right now, what partners on campus might find this tool useful, basic functionality and platforms it works in, the accommodations that it supports, accessible files and document conversion, and then looking at it as an instructional technology tool as well. Couple notes about today. EquatIO is a complex program, almost in some ways as complex, if not more than read and write. And we've spent 4 weeks diving into the ins and the outs of read and write. And we're spending just an hour today. So know that we're not going to have enough time to show you everything the tool does. I'm going to focus on the high points, kind of that 30,000 foot overview. And I'm kind of framing it in these 3 different ways that I mentioned a minute ago, kind of accommodations, accessible files and document conversion, and then as an instructional technology tool. If you have other questions, if you want to explore the tool more, obviously download a free copy of the tool. It's free for 30 days from our website. You can definitely do that. And we can also set you up with more demonstrations, more time to play, resources, etc. Just reach out and let me know what you need. I am also not a math expert. I was a psychology major in college, actually, and the last time I took really any math was as a freshman in college, which was somewhere around 15 years ago. And then I also took some statistics the year after. So I am going to show you some fairly basic math, some examples we have. I am not going to be able to answer nitty-gritty math questions of whether it can or cannot do all these things. Again, we can hook you up with people who can answer those questions, but I do want to assure you that our tool can do complex math. Even though I'm only showing you algebra, very basic calculus things, our tool can do a lot more than that. My goal today overall is to give you the gist of how it can support you on campus in your roles as a disability resource provider, accessibility resource provider, document remediator, or as a faculty or instructional designer. If you're wanting a deeper dive, like I mentioned, we can either do things one-on-one with whoever your representative is, or we could potentially set up another exploration webinar, deep dive type thing, either with myself or our product manager in the coming weeks, or even as the fall term begins. It looks like 2 people are saying they aren't hearing any audio. Can people hear me? I tested it before I got started and it said I was good to go. It sounds like people can hear me. All right, so James and Renee, wow, everyone's saying I can hear me. Thank you so much. If you guys haven't been able to, maybe unplug, replug, hop in, hop back out. You should be able to hear me though right now. Thank you to everyone who said you could hear me. Perfect, I appreciate that. All right, let me see. Anything else? Looks like No more questions. Let me just double check the chat box. No chats. All right. And looks like we're good to go. Just double check in. Maureen, it looks like you have a question quick. Maureen, did you wanna speak about something? Type into the chat box.
I was just raising my hand to say I could hear you.
Perfect. That's perfect. That works great. Thank you, Maureen. All right. So that all being said, let's actually dive in and talk about what EquatIO is. All right. So what is EquatIO? EquatIO is an easy to use math and STEM editor, which essentially says it's a way for you to be able to create math and STEM content and interact with it. And when I say math and STEM content, we're actually going to, in a minute, break this down what we actually mean by that, because it's actually much more vast than just that. But essentially, it's going to allow users to read and create math easily. And a lot of times with math and STEM editors, you're needing to use a lot of complex math code in order to do so. Our tool makes it very easy to be able to do that. We're built on universal design for learning principles. That's kind of at the core of what we did when we built this tool, because we really want students to be able to reach content. We want them to be able to engage, show what they know. All of those parts of UDL are central to what we do, and you'll be able to kind of see this as we go through today. So if your campus has any UDL initiatives, it fits in really well. If your office is big on UDL, which so many disability accessibility resource offices are, this is right up your alley. And then a piece that a lot of people kind of don't realize is that it actually seamlessly integrates with read and write in a way, which is kind of why I wanted to spend a week talking about this, because there is actually some overlap in how it can provide math to speech capabilities or being able to read math out loud to students, okay? So EquatIO is a toolbar, and I'm going to break down all the different places that it works. But right now on the screen, I have an image of my Google Doc. I'm going to show you most of our stuff today in Google just because it's easy. It's what I'm presenting in right now. We'll talk about all the other places that it works. But essentially, it's a toolbar that floats at the bottom of your screen. So if you can see the screen at the very bottom, there's a toolbar that kind of hangs out. Read and write, we have the kind of real estate at the top for read and write of the screen. EquatIO floats at the bottom. So if you have a student who needs both at the same time, they can have them open. They're not going to overlap with one another. And it's easy to toggle on and toggle off, just like read and write, like we've covered all these other weeks. The Chrome extension, just click the button on off, I'll show you, much like any of our other tools as well. EquatIO has 4 major platforms. And like I said, we're going to show you it in Google today. I know that some higher ed is Google, some higher ed is Mac, but you'll be happy to know that it also does work for Windows and Mac on the desktop. So if you're a Google school, use it in Google. If you're a Windows, Mac, Office 365 school, use it on the desktop. We are actually working on a build out for the Microsoft schools with a login to access the Google version in Office 365. So much like that development that we had that came out for Read and Write about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where you're able to access as a Microsoft school the Google version of Read Write, it's the same thing with EquatIO. We're working on that right now. When that is going to be released, not totally sure, but I'll make sure to communicate out from my end to my schools who that is, and typically our marketing tries to get updates out as well. The third platform is EquatIO MathSpace. It's a website and also an app that works on Google Chrome and the iPad. I'm going to briefly talk about this. It's used a little bit in higher ed, and there's definitely some ways that instructors can use it. So know that I'll just briefly touch on it today, kind of towards the end. But the other big way that this tool works with higher ed is that it works in learning management systems. And the two that it works in, most commonly used in higher ed, is Canvas and Brightspace D2L. So if you're either one of those schools, know that the tool works. If you're a different school and you're wanting to see our tool built into your learning management system, give us a holler, just like in Read and Write with EquatIO. There is a feedback form that you can fill out in the options area, or reach out to your rep and give them feedback, and we'll send that over to our developers. So to kind of break this down even more, where does it actually work? I want to make sure we're all kind of on the same page. In Google Suite or G Suite, the tool works in places like Docs, Sheets, Slides, Forms. With Microsoft, it works in Word, and we are working on it working within PowerPoint as well, again on the desktop, Mac, and Windows. We're also building out that online version as well for Microsoft to have access in Google, but there's functionality within the web for the tool. It works in those learning management systems like I mentioned. And then different types of documents, it kind of interacts with PDFs, docs, image-based text, PowerPoint. You're going to see a lot of similar features to how we read and kind of interact with imaged content when we start talking about the screenshot reader within EquatIO that you do with read and write. And then also being able to copy and paste an image. If you can copy and paste an image somewhere, it can interact with read and write or with EquatIO right now. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, 2 weeks ago, one of the summer campers popped in and said, hey, does EquatIO work with Respondus? We've done some preliminary testing and there's some pieces of it that do work with Respondus, but we aren't fully compatible because we haven't built it out. If this is something that you're seeing you need, you are feeling like you want to provide feedback on, again, feel free to throw feedback into the feedback form within EquatIO saying what you'd hope to see from this, or feel free to throw in the chat box or the questions area what type of functionality you'd want to see. So if you're familiar with EquatIO and you're like, you know what, we need this for Respondus or a lockdown browser, let me know what you're seeing or wanting, or feel free to drop me an email and I can kind of compile it all. So there's some limited functionality. Again, it wasn't built out for that, but I know that that's something that's probably on a couple people's minds. All right, so I'm opening up the questions, and Chris is asking, any chance working with Blackboard will be available anytime? Chris, I know that we've looked into it as a company, but what I can do is I can just throw at our developers and our product manager one more time just so we have another vote for Blackboard. So know that I will pass that feedback on. Actual timelines of things, I don't always have those. Our developers kind of wait to hold back on final dates and times just because we don't want to get our customers too excited and then have a hiccup somewhere along the lines. But I will give that feedback to them for sure. So let's briefly talk about accessibility too with EquatIO. Accessibility is so central to higher education right now and has been for a while, but EquatIO is kind of an avenue to be able to help schools create accessible content. Kind of the most basic way that it's doing this is within our tool when we're creating these equations, when they're inserted into a document or a type of space, it will automatically add in an alternative text or even the MathML into the alt text behind an image of an equation. And I'll show you how that works in a little bit. Because this tool works the way it does, we did the build out like we did, it actually is providing schools a method for transforming inaccessible content to accessible ways. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about how faculty can use the tool, how disability resources or remediation specialists can use the tools, things like that. And then some of the features we have built in as well are actually accessible from kind of the get-go. And one of the ones is Desmos. I'm going to show you this in a little bit, but if you're at all familiar with Desmos, if you have instructional design faculty or instructional designers or faculty who are hanging out with us today, know that our tool does embed Desmos in it, and those tools are completely accessible. Anything that those products have built in accessibility wise, we build in ourselves as well as we integrate it. So know that accessibility is on our mind with this tool, and it's providing you a way to ensure your content is accessible as well. Let's see, Jamie threw in some comments just about the lockdown browser. Thanks, Jamie. I'll kind of monitor the questions coming in and feedback. I won't necessarily respond to all of that, but if there are questions, like I said, I'll answer them as we go. So let's talk briefly about how EquatIO supports a campus. And when I think about this kind of from someone who used to work in higher ed for many years and still works with higher ed extensively, there's kind of three different ways: accommodations, accessible files and document conversion, and then instructional technology tool. All right, let's break this down quickly. So for accommodations, EquatIO is going to provide a method and avenue for students who need access to content or the curriculum, who work with disability resources, a way to get accommodations. Okay, so if a student comes to your office and they need support with math for a variety of different reasons, we're going to break down what that looks like. But this tool can be a tool that helps with that accommodation provision. Next up, accessible files and document conversion. EquatIO is going to provide you disability resources, accessibility resources. If you have a remediation team on campus, whoever it is, it's going to provide them with a way to create more accessible content, specifically math and science, in a way that's going to save you time and in the end save you money by not outsourcing or just saving you in staff time. Okay, so we'll talk more about this in a minute, but I just kind of want to set the stage. And then last up, it's also an instructional technology tool. It's going to provide faculty and instructional designers a vehicle to be able to teach math and science content in an online environment in a way that isn't static and can be actually fairly engaging for students. So I know that right now a lot of schools are going online, and so this tool provides higher ed a way to do that. And I'll actually share some anecdotal stories as we go through today about all of these based on my role both in higher ed, working with document conversion, then also working with faculty and instructional designers around this avenue and area. Okay, let me check the questions quick. Doug, will this presentation be available for me? I have some disruptions in the internet. Yes, Doug, I will send out the recording and the slide deck to you by the end of the day. So know it's coming later on. Great question. All right, so who might be beneficial for interacting with this tool on campus? Who might use this? All right. First and foremost, students. I know I've mentioned them either needing accommodations or for the general class population. They can interact with the tool, use the tool in classes, and be able to create digital math for online classes, assignments, taking exams, etc. Faculty, obviously for teaching, for making a class more engaging, having digital projects online, things like that. And then last up, disability resources or accessibility resources. Again, accommodation provision. We're going to talk about how this can help kind of in lieu of readers and scribes, and then also with that textbook conversion and materials. Now, subject areas is something that I always like to shed light on. When we talk about math and STEM content, obviously kind of what floats to the top of your head is math and STEM, math content, calculus and algebra and maybe statistics. STEM, we're talking about science, technology, engineering. Math is kind of included in there. But one of the things we kind of overlook or oversee is all those other subject areas on a campus where math is embedded in the curriculum, but it isn't necessarily when you first think of a class, what you do kind of day to day. And that's what happens when you talk about things like computer science or economics, okay, business, finances, accounting, supply chain management, okay? So just kind of have that in the back of your brain that it's not necessarily just math and STEM, but economics, business, etc. When we were bringing this to one of my two campuses a couple years ago, we actually had this prompted by our economics department. They needed something to be able to teach online. And I'll actually kind of share more with you about their story later on, but they were actually the driving force, not necessarily our math or science faculty. All right, so let's start breaking down what this tool actually does and how it works. So over the next kind of 40 minutes, 35 minutes or so, we're going to kind of break down what it does, how it works, and then kind of practical applications. Again, we're not going to be able to go over everything, but I want you to kind of have this, again, 30,000 foot overview. So as I mentioned, the tool's built on universal design for learning principles, essentially students being able to interact with content in multiple different ways, being able to express themselves in multiple different ways. Faculty potentially, if they use the tool, can have themselves create content in different ways for student interaction. Kind of all those core features is important. So within our toolbar, when students are going to create content, or faculty are going to create content, or instructional designers are going to create content for students and for classes, there's a variety of different ways we can actually make math happen. And the first way is actually speech input. So this is really great for disability resource offices for students who struggle to type math, better at speaking math, things like that. It's essentially math dictation that's built in. One of the myths that I always like to debunk is the fact that it only does basic math dictation, and that's not true at all. It does do complex math dictation. It does do that. So know that it's not just going to do basic things that I show you today. It's going to be able to do complex math dictation. Second up is prediction. The tool does have math, chemistry, physics, formula prediction built in, which you can, as a user, toggle on and off. So for a student who might struggle around entry of text, typing things out, this can be a real game changer to save them time to be able to keep on top of their work. I know there's always a debate when we have faculty around about pedagogy with predictive formulas and whether we have students who need to memorize formulas for taking a test, or are we applying formulas? What are we testing on? Know that I'm happy to talk about that. There's just not time to really get into that today. But for ease of use, either for students creating content or even faculty, if they're creating content, disability resources converting content, having the ability to have predictive tests just kind of streamlines and makes creating content go faster, which right now, for a lot of us, we need to save all the time that we have. Next up is handwriting recognition. If you have a touch screen on your computer or you can use your mouse, you can do handwriting recognition. I've got a GIF on the screen here that literally is just showing you somebody writing out the handwriting recognition. As you write on the screen, it's going to populate the digital math and then allow you to um, send it into whatever document you're working on. One thing I forgot to mention when I was talking about prediction just a second ago is if you turn off prediction, you do still have the ability to just do basic typing of an equation. So it's not an all or nothing type of thing. If you turn prediction off, you can definitely type out an equation, not an issue at all. I mentioned Desmos a couple minutes ago, which is the ability to do some dynamic graphing. Desmos is used quite a bit in higher education. When I've talked with faculty, when I've talked with departments, I always get a like, oh, that's great that you have Desmos, because I know that a lot of schools do use Desmos as part of their curriculum. And then new within the last, since spring, late spring, we did add Desmos' scientific calculator to our suite as well. Again, we follow their accessibility, which I know that they're on top of for WCAG requirements, so know that all that's built on our end. But know that this scientific calculator was built in as well as another feature. One of the ones I'm going to start showing you today is our screenshot reader, which really is key for disability resource offices. But much like the screenshot reader within Read Write, it is going to do some OCRing of math on the fly and then be able to read that math content out loud to students, which is really a game changer. And we'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. Then we did this spring launch 2 brand new chemistry tools as well, which I know chemistry faculty that I've talked with about this said this is a game changer in allowing them to teach online, especially now with the move to online learning. First and foremost is an interactive periodic table, which allows you to see the periodic table, allows you to interact, see different information on each of the elements, and then actually allows you to enter elements as well into the equation editor. So know that that's there if you have chemistry faculty who would like to use it. The second one then that actually just came out within the last week that we're really excited to share with you is our molecular viewer. Again, a huge game changer for chemistry. It basically provides the user with the ability to see, manipulate, look at different molecules in chemistry. I am not a chemistry major, as I said, so those with chemistry background are gonna love this, but just know that it's here. So if you ever end up passing kind of your faculty in the hallway and mention this tool, this is something that might kind of perk their ears up and make them get excited. All right, so let's break down how this actually supports a campus. Over the next kind of 30 minutes, let's do this. Let's actually walk through what this looks like, okay? First and foremost for accommodations, I mentioned that this tool is gonna be able to provide you, if you're within disability resources, accessibility resources, ways for students to access content in the curriculum, okay? So let's actually talk about what this looks like, and then we'll actually show you what it looks like. First and foremost is it's gonna read content out loud. It's going to be able to read those math equations, those STEM equations, through sort of a couple different ways. The screenshot reader within EquatIO will allow you to do it. So much like the read and write screenshot reader, we can draw a box around an equation. It's going to read out loud to a student what it is that the equation is. The second way is that if we create content with EquatIO, we add in things like the alt text behind the equation, which automatically is created with our tool. I'll show you in a minute. It's going to be able to be read out loud with read and write. Okay, so that's where these kind of cross over together. All right, this can go for textbooks, for assignments, exams, you name it, math content, students can read it. Okay, and kind of anecdotally, when I worked with students for many years, we used to always talk about what would you do to kind of get access to math content. And more often than not, the response I would hear was, well, I'll just deal with it, or I just manage Rachel. There aren't tools to read math out loud. And this actually gives students that opportunity. The time and time again, this worked with students with dyslexia, for example, who, would struggle with reading math equations out loud or hearing them, seeing them. Technology just wasn't there, and they just hoped that when they read it correctly. When they took their test, they just hoped that they had written it down the way that they intended it. And this tool really bridges that gap to allow students to have access, which is a game changer in my opinion from my time working with students. How does it do this? And this is where we're going to talk about it again for just a second, and then I'll show it to you. With our screenshot reader tool, again, I mentioned much like read write, I've got a picture of it on the screen. This is actually part of a textbook or part of a website. We can just draw a box around a math equation. What's going to happen is that OCR is going to be done kind of on the fly. And then we've got this little play button up at the top, which allows us to hear content read out loud as many times as we need. We'll show you this in action in a minute, but know that this works on a website. This works within a textbook. This works within a document. Wherever that screenshot reader works and is, it can read content out loud. Okay. Second up, it's going to allow students to create digital content. Okay. And this is really key for students who might struggle with writing physically or due to a learning disability that impacts math. So just think about that kind of framed. So using kind of those input methods, again, that I'm going to show you in a minute, students can create digital math content in a way that makes it easier for them as opposed to handwriting. I had a student who had CP a few years ago, had a math class. We're trying to figure out how we could get him access. Writing was not an option, and he definitely didn't want to have to rely on a scribe all the time to do his math homework, even in the nights, weekends, etc. We put this tool in front of him, and he was able to himself create digital copies of his math, which he submitted to faculty. The same goes for students with learning disabilities, who we think of, who might be mixing letters and numbers and things like that, or handwriting can be a struggle. So know that this can help for sure. This tool also can kind of eliminate the need for a peer scribe or writer too for testing, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But again, using that toolbar on the bottom of our screen here, we're able to, in places like Google Documents or on top of PDFs, students can insert equations, which I've got a picture of a couple equations on the screen here, insert them with really to be able to be done independently. So know that that's an option for students, which can be a real game changer. And then, as I mentioned, a substitute for readers and writers. I know right now that because of the landscape of what higher ed looks like, things are changing every day, every week, every month. But readers and scribes are going to be something that are going to be tough to maybe put into place, either kind of from afar or in person. And on top of it, technology is really kind of seen as a better way to create accommodations for students because we're able to kind of have those students do so independently. So know that this tool can replace having somebody read a test to a student or have somebody writing out an exam answer for them. They can just do it themselves independently where and when it works for them. So let's actually see this in action. All right, let's take a peek at this. So what I have up here on my screen is I have a chemistry textbook. It's a calculus textbook, fairly straightforward. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my volume up on my speaker using that screenshot reader. So if I have EquatIO open, which I do at the bottom of my screen, I can simply click on the screenshot reader, much like the one with read and write, draw a box around an equation, and I'm actually going to move it a little bit over so I don't get the colon. There we go. It's going to do OCR on the tool or on the equation.
The fraction with numerator x squared and denominator a squared plus the fraction with numerator y squared and denominator b squared equals 1.
So it reads out loud. Again, we've got that play button that a student can use to play over and over and over again, as many as they need. And I could literally do this with any of the equations in the textbook and have it read out loud. Okay, so paired with read and write, I can do things like have this text read out loud with read and write. I can have this text here in the textbook read with EquatIO. So I've got my read write at the top, I got my EquatIO at the bottom, kind of tag teaming with one another. Some people think that can be challenging for students to have both up. Some students say, nah, it's good. Students can handle it. So you'll kind of need to know your students, but know that it works seamlessly together, kind of two of them. If you're just going to give a PDF to a student without any editing, without anything kind of behind it, okay? Now, if, for example, I had some type of math exam and what I've got on here is just a Google Doc. This would work the same with a Microsoft Word document for etc. You're able to, again, have this content read out loud. Now, I built this test with EquatIO. These are EquatIO images here, EquatIO equations. I know that because I can go into the alt text and actually see that I've got my description under the title and actually the MathML in the actual description of the alt text. But what we can do is then again, using read and write, a student can go through and hear content read out loud.
Part I, simplify the expression. Part I, simplify the expression.
Oh, it's repeating the same sentence for me. Hang on, let me hop down here. Hang on. Let's try that.
Part I, simplify the expression. 1.2x minus 5 equals 5x plus 7. 1.
So as you can hear, it's read the equation out loud because it was created with EquatIO in a math exam, minus my little snafu there with getting it to read. I can guarantee that it does. So if you've created in your office a copy of the exam, or if you have faculty send in a copy of the exam, a student can then listen to an exam read out loud instead of having a reader, okay? Now let's actually talk about creating content. Down at the bottom here are all of our different entry methods, and I obviously can't go through every single one of them with you today, but to kind of give you that 10,000 foot overview, our options area is going to be over here. So much like read and write, you can go in here and you can adjust things, change things, turn prediction off and on. But then whenever I want to enter math somewhere, just want to put my cursor where it is I want to enter math, and then simply click on any of our different entry methods, and it's going to bring up this editor, for example. So this is our equation editor. This is where I can type text in. This is where the prediction would come into play if I had that on. Now, if I'm a student and I want to, type in something, all I need to do is just start typing. And maybe it's 2x plus 3y, 3y equals 7. That's something that's kind of the next part of our equation. All I need to do is type it in, click insert math, and what it's going to do, it's going to add in an equation right where my cursor was, again with that alt text and that math amount. Now, if I wanted to do something more complex and I wanted to add in some type of equation or formula, I can definitely type in the name of that. And while I start typing, it's going to predict what it is that I'm trying to type. And so if I'm trying to get at the quadratic formula, there it is. It repopulates it for me. I can click on it and it automatically adds it in. And then all of this is completely editable. So maybe I know that A is, 7, for example. I can go in and change that. And then again, insert math any given time I need to within the assignment. And again, students can independently, instead of using a writer, do this. This also allows you to do multiple lines. So if a student decided, I need to show multiple steps of an equation, I can always, type in the quadratic formula again. Maybe I figured out, that A is 7. Maybe I figured out that negative B is 5. This is, again, Rachel doing math from 15 years ago. We can add in multiple lines of an equation that's being solved, and it will go all in together in one fell swoop, as you can see. So we've got that order of what they did. So really easy for students to show their work, okay? Now, as I kind of just showed you, no need for readers, no need for writers. A proctor doesn't need to be here because a student can do this on their own. It can be read out loud. A student can go back and listen to what they've put in. They can just kind of do it themselves. And if typing doesn't work, students can do that handwriting recognition. So I'm actually going to delete all of this. But I could, because I have a touchscreen, 2x plus 3y, and it's going to actually show up over here on the right side, and I can enter that in. Same with our speech input. I can delete this. 7x plus 2y equals 10. It's going to pick up on only what the math is that said. It's going to put it over on the math side, hit the enter button, and then click insert math. So it's very straightforward for students to use. It's pretty easy for them to pick up on. And again, gives them that choice of universal design. How do we want to enter? Okay. Looks like we have a question here. Let's see here. Did it read the MathML? Robin, great question. It can read the MathML. Usually screen readers are what pick up on the MathML. This was a newer development in the spring. We added it in for that reason, that we wanted those alt text MathMLs to be read the best way possible based on a screen reader. I have talked to our development team a little bit about that because they listened to customers and the customers said, you guys said we want it to be able to be read via MathML with the screen reader interacting with it. So if you have more questions on that, give me a holler and we can talk more about it, but that's kind of what I know about it. Looks like Phyllis, can you demonstrate how to insert a complex calculus equation, e.g. fractions under square roots? I found it tricky to get the correct spacing so that fractions are inserted properly. Phyllis, I am not a chemistry whiz, so if you'd like, what I'm actually gonna have you do is send me an email of what you're looking for, and I can either do a video or a product manager can do it. I don't wanna spend a bunch of time trying to get you exactly what you need. I know that from talking with faculty, complex chemistry equations definitely can be done. Just send me what you need and we can pull something together for you. Okay. So that being said, very basic, again, 30,000 foot level, you're able to see how students can read content, they can create their own content. You don't really need readers, writers, things like that. But the key is that students are having more access to math and science content than they had before. All right, let's hop back into our presentation for just a minute and talk a little bit about accessible files and document conversion. So as I said, document conversion, this is key, and we actually as a company kind of fell into this. We built out this tool in a lot of different ways. I was actually presenting with Text Help about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now at a conference, and we were trying to kind of show some things. And what we realized with interaction from the audience was that we had built out the ability for disability resource offices, accessibility resource offices, remediation teams to more easily and quickly create accessible content, either textbooks, assignments, math, questions, etc. One of the ways we do that is through the ability to take an image of an equation and turn it into MathML. And it's going to look really similar to what I just showed you with the screenshot reader. There's a couple extra features in there that I'll be able to show you how it works. But MathML is key to creating accessible content, especially for our blind low vision students out there who are using a screen reader to get content. Right now, so many schools are manually creating these equations. They're retyping them themselves, or they're hiring student employees with math and science background to do this for offices, or the books are getting shipped out or farmed out to companies at a huge cost to the institution. Instead, by using our tool, anyone in the office can create this content. You can have students doing this job, but they don't necessarily have to be math and science whizzes, or they can simply just be, they can be done at a less cost effective or a less cost time. It takes less time to do this, okay? In addition, when we're putting those equations into documents, we are able to copy that image with either the MathML and or the alt text again, kind of like what Robin mentioned a minute ago in her question. the key is that this is going to provide an avenue for it to be done quicker, faster, easier. In addition, if you are someone who runs into an issue with a certain equation being tricky with the screenshot reader, or someone who would just manually like to enter it in and not do kind of the copy paste I'm going to show you, you can manually type in equations, but it's going to go way faster than if you're using something like Equation Editor in Microsoft, or even Math Type, where you're kind of clicking buttons to get what you need. As you saw, I could simply type out quad and it's going to populate the quadratic formula. So again, it's just going to expedite that time. And again, it's going to help with textbooks, assignments, exams on campus, things like that. Okay. Um, let's see. Is there a way to make handwriting screen larger for longer equations? Yes, Phyllis, it is. You definitely can increase the size of the equations either by just pulling and dragging, and or you can also within the options area create larger text size as well. And then Robin has a question which uh, she beat me to the punch with this one, but I'll talk about it now. What Robin wants me to let you know is that you do have to have a site license in order for the remediation to work. She's 100% correct on that. A disability resource office can't buy just a single license and use it to convert a file. You do have to buy a domain license to be able to do all of this OCRing of the math. So that's something that I always like to make sure people know on the front end. It does have a different version with the OCR engine. A single license does not have the OCR engine built in. Full version does. But to be completely honest, if you were to purchase this tool for conversion, there's all these other positives that come with it in regards to students having accommodation access, being able to use it across campus, like I'm going to talk about in a minute, things like that. So thanks for the segue, Robin. I appreciate it. So we talk about cost and time savings. Kind of from what we're gathering is somewhere around 2/3 of a time saving effort. So if it takes you 100 hours to convert a textbook in-house to an accessible version for a blind low vision student who's using a screen reader, cut 2/3 of that off and you'll be able to do it that much faster because you have these automations built in. You can do the OCR to get the math-eval or the description. You can do the typing because you have the prediction behind you as opposed to clicking. Likewise, for an estimated cost, if you're kind of shipping out a book, by purchasing a tool like this one to support you all in your offices, the cost of one book that you're saving will pay for this tool if you decide to do things in-house. So if you're looking for a better, faster way to do this because you're doing this in-house manually, this tool can save you. But then also, if you're doing kind of conversion in-house for assignments or exams for students, you need them to find a different way for proctors and writers, scribes. You need a substitution for that or a different way of having that accommodation be the case. This is a great way to do it. One tool I just want to mention quickly is EquatIO Mobile, which actually can help us along the way. Essentially what EquatIO Mobile does, and there's a GIF on the screen here that's showing you somebody who's actually handwriting on their iPhone or iPad, and what it does is actually sends content over to a document, either in Google, Word, things like that. So you can kind of push content from a mobile device into a actual computer. For disability resource offices who need to kind of do things quickly and on the fly, what you can do is actually take a picture of a math worksheet or a test, even if a faculty's dropped it off at the 11th hour. Take a picture with your iPhone and actually send those equations over one at a time. So instead of having to manually type them in, if you don't have a physical way of doing this, like I'll show you in a minute, just use your phone to do it. And actually some exciting information that I have to share with you all is that at some point, again, I'm not exactly sure when, you'll actually be able to take a picture of an entire page of math and it will do the OCR and allow you to send that test over to a digital version. So if you're someone who's manually been creating exams for students, making them accessible from a print version that a math faculty dropped off or a chemistry faculty dropped off, you're able to just take a picture at some point, hopefully soonish, and just make your life that much easier, that much faster. So, let's see here. And then Robin says the 2/3 time saving is based on starting with a PDF rather than LaTeX. Yes, correct, Robin. Kind of if you're starting with some type of PDF or digital copy of a book, absolutely. If you're starting with LaTeX, you can actually even sometimes save a little bit more time in some ways, because we do have a LaTeX editor built into our tools. A lot of the timing depends on your workflow and how it works, but know that the overall consensus is that it's saving you time if you're doing things in person in-house for this. Okay. So let's actually see this in action for just a couple minutes. Let's see what this looks like from a conversion standpoint. So what I have this exact same calculus textbook in front of me. What I did a little bit ago today was I actually started creating a page of content directly from the textbook. So I've got this analytic geometry, I've got this slope point formula, I've got my coordinates here, I've got my equation here. I'm ready to begin the next point. So what I can do then is I'm going to start working on this part here. Circle with radius r, centered at. So what I can do is I can copy that text, paste it, and I can, if I would like, I can change the r with EquatIO, but what I'd rather do is actually show you a more complex formula. Again, I can do the coordinates, but what I'll do is actually show you the biggie at the end here. Using the screenshot reader, much like I did for reading, I can draw a box around the equation. Try not to get the period. It's going to do that OCR. It's going to play out loud, but I can pause it or stop it, which I just did. It's got my equation OCR'd, but then this little more options button is going to be my friend here. It's going to give me an option to copy with LaTeX, copy with MathML, or edit with EquatIO. And what I can do is there's a variety of different ways that I can do this. If I'm someone who wants to copy this to LaTeX and then insert it into a document, I can simply copy the LaTeX, go over to my textbook, click on my LaTeX editor, delete my last one, paste it. So you can see my LaTeX pasted there, my equation posted here. I want it to show up at the end of this sentence, and then I can simply click Insert Math here. So if I in my office are just needing this as a Google document, for example, for a student, maybe it's an exam, maybe it's a textbook, it's a student who maybe has a learning disability, and I just need to get an equation into the document for a student so that it can be read out loud with ReadWrite, this is a great way to do it. And again, it has that alt text, that MathML built in. However, if I have a student who I might need to be making a MathML document for, again, it has that MathML in it so that you can copy it to wherever it is that you need MathML created. And what I can do actually here is show you, I have a Word document, I do have math type within this, but as you can see, I literally just copied the MathML and pasted it into my Word document, and now I have MathML equation in here. Again, you have the flexibility to paste the MathML wherever it is. I know some people do that in learning management systems, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but know that you essentially have that flexibility to do that. Likewise, if you wanted to ever change or edit this equation, you can always click Edit with EquatIO. It's going to pull it into that equation editor, and I can go in here and say, maybe I don't want this to be H, maybe I want it to be, the numeral Z instead in this equation, or I want to tweak a number, things like that. So it gives you that ability to kind of change, edit, interact, create these accessible files, okay? Now, one thing I didn't mention is our tool actually does have the ability for students to import equations not just in places like Word, but also in places like PDF as well. So if a student, for example, had a textbook and they wanted to work out equations in there, they could do so on top of a PDF, which is really great for exams. So even if you get an exam from a faculty and a student just needs a digital way to create content, it doesn't need to be read. Again, they can interact with the PDF either by reading it or by creating content on the top of it, okay? I mentioned also the ability to manually type things in as well. So maybe, I want to manually type in an equation that might come in this textbook conversion. Again, I can go back to my math editor and simply type in, as I've done before with the prediction, what I need. So maybe I need a cosine added in, for example. And again, then I can insert the cosine into the math book. Again, so you have that flexibility of what works best for your workflow, but it gives you an avenue to just do it better, faster, quicker than what some of the other tools out on the market can do. All right, let's spend a couple minutes talking about the instructional technology side of things. So kind of outside of your office if you're a disability accessibility or remediation person. This tool is really central to how a lot of schools and districts and higher ed K-12 currently are looking at how they're going to support math instruction as we go into this coming fall, um, especially given the high need for interaction within learning management systems, things like that. This was actually kind of the reason why we had this tool brought on campus where I worked because we needed a method to do that. Our economics department came to us and said, you know, our deans are asking us, we need to be teaching more sections of economics online. And we said, we can't do that without a tool. Once there's a tool available, we'll definitely do it. And this is the tool that they found to be able to bring this to the masses. And essentially what the tool does is it provides faculty, again, this method to create digital content, again, in documents, in PDFs, in a form, in all these different places. It allows students to engage and create digital math content, which then can be sent back. And then, as I've mentioned, it really is great for online courses, especially right now, given where we're at. It allows students to demonstrate mastery in a bunch of different ways. So they're able to kind of draw things out with graphing. In our math space, which I'll show you in a minute, it's kind of this open whiteboard that students can use to submit things. But just know that if you are a school that's really embracing that UDL, this is a great way to do that. On the faculty side, as I mentioned, keys to know is it does work with those two learning management systems. So if you are having classes sort of held in those environments, it works within those. They can create content from the toolbar wherever that toolbar works. They can create different lessons and different things in math space as well. So I can kind of show you that for a second. But one of the keys is really it empowers faculty. Before I left St. Thomas, my last institution, I was working with a faculty who wanted to really react to the student needs that he was working with. You know, I want to be able to change my content on a daily, weekly, monthly basis based on how much students are understanding content, how much they need extra practice. And we had some blind students that worked with him, and we said, you know, we just need time to do that. We can't do it on the fly. And he said, well, what if I use this tool myself and created the content? I don't mind creating the MathML myself, creating content for, you know, a version for students and one for the general population. And I said, great, perfect, go ahead and do that. And so it really does empower faculty to be able to be partners in the accessibility process as well, especially if you can teach them how to do that and get some buy-in. Our tool, as I've mentioned, is much easier to use than MathType and Equation Editor. We've kind of talked about that 2/3 time, but again, for faculty with the Microsoft Equation Editor kind of coming and going in availability, especially if it's gone for them, they can't get access to their assignments, EquatIO is a way for them to create this digital content, which is key. And then I mentioned, you know, just it being available in these learning management systems, which are key. And then as I always talk about, we're under continual development, continually trying to better our product. So looking at other learning management systems as well. Now, one of the areas I'm going to briefly show you is MathSpace, which is kind of our online tool for whiteboarding and kind of free form equations and assignments, things like that. So I'm going to actually hop out and show you a couple of these things right now over the next couple of minutes, and then we're kind of gonna wrap up for the day because an hour goes super fast. So first and foremost, I've got Canvas here. So if a student is engaging in content in a learning management system and they have the Chrome extension installed, they definitely can go in, and some of those same features are available. They have screenshot reader so they can have things read out loud, the periodic table, the scientific calculator, we've got the molecular viewer, and some kind of discoverability built in as well, again, our options. But what's key is that students can, within an assignment, within a quiz, using the EquatIO LTI integration, be able to insert an EquatIO equation into their assignment. And this is how faculty would build it out as well. If they're building a assignment, a quiz, etc., this is what it would look like in Canvas. And again, those features are down here at the bottom for students to be able to enter them into the assignment, okay? So very similar, kind of got that ability. Now within, I'm going to say, no, we don't want that. Within Blackboard, very similar. Again, it's an LTI integration. It doesn't show up kind of forefront because with most LTIs within D2L Brightspace, actually, I'm sorry, not Blackboard. It's under the Insert Stuff button. And as you can see, we've got EquatIO here. And it's going to look very similar. It's going to allow a student to come in, enter in their equations, again, allow faculty to create content in D2L Brightspace so that students can have that online learning experience right now. And again, faculty can send out documents, they can send out PDF, they can do all these things with all the other things I showed you, but this really is key right now for higher education, these learning management systems. Now, the last piece I'm going to show you quick is our math space, which some people really like in higher ed. Some people are like, I need a little bit more time around this. But one of kind of the key features that really are selling higher ed on this is it's a way to create lesson plans essentially with a digital kind of interactive way. So what I've got up is our math space. It gives you this dashboard so faculty can create different assignments for students, different essentially sort of like their slide decks for what it is they want to teach students. And then there's ways if you are using something like Google Classroom, I know it's not used a lot in higher ed, but there's ways to actually distribute assignments and get feedback from students, things like that. The key though is that what I've done is you can create assignments. It's kind of this free form whiteboard. We've got options with shapes and colors, and again, those STEM tools come with all those entry features, but it's just beefed up and give you more availability with this. But what we see a lot with kind of talking with higher ed folks about this is this ability to have multiple pages within one math space. So if you kind of think about, maybe this is a lesson plan or assignment here for students, what they can do is essentially it's a slide deck. When they're teaching students. There's some limitations when it comes to PowerPoint right now, but essentially faculty can create a lesson plan here and kind of work through their slides and work through a lesson and have this projected for students online right now to kind of walk them through how do we do this math concept? How do we kind of, work through this type of thing? So know that this is another option kind of to give faculty that different way of teaching, different platforms. They can do it with PDF, they can do it with Docs, they can do it with Masters, they can do it in Canvas or D2L, etc. So just know that the options are kind of there for that variety. Let's see here. Let's see what a couple of the questions are. Cynthia asked, can we lock some of the help features? For example, can we lock the scientific calculator during exams? If you are a Google school, there are ways that you can lock things down. If you're a Microsoft school, it's a little bit trickier. This is something that I've talked with our product manager about because it's feedback I've gotten. So know that it's on our kind of radar. We know about it. It's on kind of our roadmap long-term plan. When this would happen and or come out, don't exactly know, but being able to lock things down for exam is definitely something that we've talked about. I actually talked with our product manager about it today a little bit. Robin says, does that create MathML so that it's fully accessible with a screen reader in reference to EquatIO and Canvas? Yes, Robin, those same MathML descriptive text features that I showed you that happen within something like a Google Doc carry over to Canvas and carry over to DTL. We wanted that continuity so that students who use screen readers can actually have access just like their peers. That's a really great question. Those features do carry wherever it goes. And that includes when you're copying it to other places that have the ability to have alt text put into an assignment, a document, etc. that carries if the alt text is there. In the slide deck, I threw in just kind of some more information about the benefits of EquatIO, things like that. If you're looking for more information on it, I just wanted you to kind of have it in front of you because I know that we raced through this super quickly. I could spend, again, 4 weeks talking about all the different things of EquatIO. Maybe next summer we do an EquatIO Summer Camp Academy instead of Read Write. But as we wrap up for today, some ideas to carry you forward. As I mentioned, you can download a copy and try it out. If you go to the Text Help website, head to the EquatIO EquatIO part of it, you're able to download 30 days, play around with it. We have a really great EquatIO Academy on our training page. There's places that you can go to kind of learn how to use the tool more. Otherwise, reach out to your rep as well. Something to think about, do you have a current student who might benefit from the tool, either for the creation of math, or are you kind of stuck with trying to figure out how you're going to proctor exams with readers and writers from afar right now? Is this something that might be beneficial and usable to kind of help you out? Something to think about is, can this help you out with your alternative workflow? My ultimate goal when I came on board is being able to support higher ed. How do we help you with your jobs? You guys have so much going on. So I just want to kind of float ideas by you to try to help you out. Share with a friend, tell a friend. Do you have instructional designers on campus or faculty who are struggling right now knowing that you're going online or hybrid or high flex and they don't know what to do to be able to teach content online effectively? So know that, feel free to share the information with them. And then, as I mentioned, this was super quick. Do we need to do another deep dive? Do we need another webinar? If you feel like we do, feel free to throw comments in the chat box, reach out to me, and we can get some stuff together. I realize we're right at time. As a reminder, week 6, our second to last week together, is next Tuesday at the same time. We're going to talk about implementing Read and Write on campus. We're kind of circling back to Read Write. Now that you've got our tool, how do you get the word out on campus? If you're thinking about adopting, how do you make sure students are using it? How do you make sure that students know about it? So know that that's what we're going to focus on and talk about. I will stick on the line. I see we've got some questions, things like that. And thank you for hanging out today. Again, I realize that was super fast and didn't tell you everything, but I will stick around here, answer these questions that are coming in. If you have other questions, reach out. If you're kind of good for the day, feel free to take off, but thanks for your time. Let's see here. Um, Denise asked, I seem to remember in one of the sessions that Read and Write could use the text-to-speech option for AccuPlacer. When I tried it with the screen share reader, it reads, but it also messes with the program, e.g. coding on the screen. Denise, if you want to reach out to me and tell me a little bit more about what's going on, we did actually test it with AccuPlacer a few different ways. I'm wondering if you don't have a feature flipped on that sometimes can help with that, but myself or your rep can help out with that, okay? Robin, I meant MathML that a student can dig into expression by expression rather than alt text. Robin, yes, they should be able to do that with the MathML. They should be able to go kind of expression by expression from what I know. If you have a specific situation, feel free to shoot me an email. My email is on the screen and I can connect you with rep, product manager. We can do some trial error, things like that. Deborah says more webinars. Robin, I want to learn more. Perfect. Awesome. And then Denise would like to see how EquatIO can read AccuPlacer. I will kind of compile all these questions, all these thoughts, try to figure out kind of where to go from here for higher ed. As I said, it's a kind of beast of a program, and I want to make sure that you guys know what it can do and how it can support you for sure. So that looks like all the questions as of now. I'll wait around for a minute just to see if there's anything else. Otherwise, thanks for joining. I'll see you all next week, as I said, for week 6.